So that was my big lesson is don't be attracted just to a cap rate on paper or a projected NOI on paper. Really look at what's going to be involved to achieve that cap rate and establish your comfort level about what type of property you're interested in.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman. I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show, leave us that rating and review. We want to hear from you, but we also want other people to find the show and understand all the great insights that you're getting from this show. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Zach Winter. If you're ready to scale your apartment investing portfolio, but you have questions, make sure you join us live for a special and exclusive Q&A session we're going to be hosting Wednesday, April 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now, during this session, we're going to go over some of your top questions and some of the frequently asked questions we receive from both active investors and passive investors. This is a great opportunity to ask those direct questions, get some feedback from us, and learn how to scale your apartment investing portfolio. Join us Wednesday, April 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Register using the link in our show notes. Again, this is live Q&A session Wednesday, April 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can register using the link in our show notes. Zach Winter is a founding partner and the CEO of Prosperity CRE, a private equity firm specializing in providing passive investment opportunities in multifamily apartment complexes. Now, Mr. Winter focuses on overseeing the real estate investment portfolios and advising and assisting clients who choose to invest with Prosperity CRE. Let's welcome to the show, Zach Winter.
Hey, John, thanks very much for having me on your first show. I'm excited.
Absolutely. Zach, great to have you on this show. Tell us a little bit more about yourself in 2 minutes.
Sure. Well, I'm an attorney by training, but at this point, I don't practice law representing third parties. I'm a full-time real estate investor. And as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and one of the two founding partners of Prosperity CRE. So really fully focused on our real estate investment company. It is a small private equity company where we offer passive investment opportunities, primarily focused on multifamily at this point. But I do have that legal experience. I also have some public affairs and ballot campaign management experience as well.
What got you into commercial real estate, especially as you're already an attorney? Most people assume
Yeah,
you're probably doing well and making money. Why invest in real estate?
I've always been passionate about real estate. Probably from my grandfather. My grandfather owned a lot of single tenant, triple net lease properties, like Walgreens, Rite Aid, Payless Shoe Source. And as an attorney, when he passed away, I became the trustee of the estate and oversaw those properties for my father and his sister. So that's when I first really started to get some hands-on experience that was related to commercial real estate. And um, and then I also, prior to that, began buying. This is, I think, a common story about how people get into real estate. I started buying single family homes around the country and renting them out. And, eventually I realized that for a variety of reasons, you're much better off going commercial, investing in larger, higher caliber properties. And so I eventually made the transition. Initially, my first commercial property that I acquired and syndicated was a hotel in Austin, Texas. Great property, would never do another hotel again. It's very, very hands-on. It's much more like owning a business and running a business than it is owning a piece of commercial real estate. It's kind of like owning an apartment, except every day you have all new tenants coming into all of the units. So it's very hands-on. But we ended up doing very well. Austin is a great market for hotels. There's so many activities going on there, with it being the state capital and UT Austin and South by Southwest and Austin City Limits and the Circuit of the Americas Formula One racetrack. So there's so many activities always happening there. And so as a hotel owner, it was a great location.
Yeah, you talked about, going from your trade, you were actually the one in charge of the estate. when your grandfather passed, you were
Yeah.
overseeing that entire process, and that kind of gave you some real insight to the portfolio and some of the decisions that your grandfather had made. You ended up doing some single family rentals across the country, but ultimately realized that, hey, this really isn't that efficient. I've got deals and properties all over the
Yeah.
place. Let me focus on commercial real estate, with that first property being a hotel in Austin. I want to go back to your grandfather's estate because I think that's really interesting. And
Yeah.
everyone certainly won't have this experience, but what was one of the key insights you took from overseeing his estate and looking at the investments he had made over time and kind of
Yeah.
understanding like what his strategy was and how that helped you and your family?
So my grandfather owned a couple of very successful businesses, and he sold them over time. And I think part of his retirement strategy and estate planning strategy was to buy these single tenant triple net lease properties, which were very hands off conceptually, right? It's essentially considered mailbox money. You're buying a single tenant triple net lease property. And it's usually, if it's a franchise, it's usually a sale and a lease back. And so it's considered mailbox money. And so it's supposed to be a very passive investment. One of the takeaways that I got from managing those properties is I held them through one of the earlier recessions in about 99, 2000, 2001. And what happened is even though we were the landlords, we did not have as much leverage in my point of view than the tenants. So um, um, if the tenant came to us and said, "Okay, well the lease is coming up for renewal, we want a reduction in the lease rate, otherwise we're going to leave." They had a lot of leverage because then you're left with an empty box with no tenant and no cash flow. It's very different than a multi-tenanted operation. So we own a couple of industrial flex office parks, and the leases are triple net leases, but because they're multi-tenanted, if one of the tenants moves out, it's not that harmful to our cash flow. We've still got lots of other tenants. But with these single tenant triple net lease properties, if the tenant moves out, you're left with a vacant box, right? And then who knows how long it's going to take to re-tenant it up, especially if these are in fairly remote or tertiary markets where the demand may not be as high as if it's in, a popular location in Los Angeles, for example. So that was one of the key takeaways that I learned, is that even though something may be marketed as a very safe investment, a single tenant triple net lease property, and very hands off, if the tenant decides that their lease is too much, their lease payments, they can come to you and they have a lot of leverage. Even if the lease isn't up for renewal, they could still say, well, the lease is coming up for renewal in two years, but because of the recession, we're having difficulty making the payments. So you need to negotiate with us. And then you're kind of, in a situation where you don't have as much leverage as if it were a multi-tenanted situation. So that was one of the key takeaways. And that frankly is why I personally don't like single tenant triple net lease um, investments. We're always looking for ways to structure away risk, and in my view, that's a fairly big risk. You only have one tenant. If they move out, are you capitalized enough to carry that property, to pay the insurance, the taxes, the upkeep, to pay to have a new tenant come in? If it's vacant, you're going to have to invest some significant funds in tenant improvement, and you're probably also going to have to pay a large leasing commission to the leasing broker.
Yeah, I think it's really insightful, right? Understanding that, single tenants, triple net lease seems like mailbox money. It appears to be low risk, at least when it comes to commercial real estate investing. But one of the biggest risks is the potential for that tenant to leave or to renegotiate, even when in theory, you as the landlord should have more leverage because they're the ones who, have that power. They can leave. It's going to take you time to release that unit or that property. You may have to rebuild it out, and if you're in a tertiary location, you're going to have a small number of folks who are looking at it. And I think it's really important for people to understand is that Every asset class has its pros and cons, but you mentioned the difference between single net or single tenant versus multi-tenant. There's obviously some flexibility there, industrial flex spaces. And then I know you also focus more on multifamily investing as well. So lots of
Yeah.
different options when it comes to commercial real estate. I think for the investor, you have to figure out which level of risk are you more comfortable with.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, I know that some of your listeners are, you know, acquiring multifamily. And if they're syndicating, for example, we syndicate our investments. That's another factor is if you're getting all the money up front from your passive investors, is that going to support the type of commercial property you're investing in? So, for example, if you buy a retail strip mall, or you buy an office building, or you buy a multi-tenanted industrial property, how are you going to finance the tenant improvement and leasing commission costs in year two, three, four, five, later on after you've owned the property for a while, whatever cash flow, whatever cash you've raised to acquire the property, maybe to do some initial upgrades, what are you going to do in year three, four, or five? Are you sitting on that money? Are you pre-raising it and paying a return on it? Are you going to do a capital call, years down the road? Are you going to pull it out of cash flow? So those are other considerations that you need to make if you're in that type of a property.
No, I love that. Let's talk more about what you are focused on today, because I know you're in California. We've so far talked about deals in Texas and all over the country.
Yeah.
Where's your primary markets today?
Right now, we're really in the Midwest and the Southeast. So we have properties in St. Louis, in Kansas City, which is outside of the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill Research Triangle. Great market. So we love North Carolina. We love Missouri, Kansas. We're actively looking in a couple markets in Ohio, and Indianapolis, and a couple of other markets in the Midwest as well.
Talk to us about your criteria, right? So when I heard you say those markets, there are a couple of themes there, but what are you
Yeah.
actually looking for? What's your buy box?
So, I mean, we start at the market level, right? We're not looking at everything that comes across our desk, regardless of the market. It's got to be in one of our key markets. So we start at the market level. We have over 20 metrics that we look at to say, okay, we think these are the strongest markets for multifamily value add. So once we've keyed in on the markets, then we're looking for specific criteria for our properties. We're buying value add, which is a very common strategy. So we're looking for value add. Um, we're looking for certain vintage, and we're looking for a certain unit count. So right now we're targeting 100 to 250 units. Um, and uh, and we're also looking at the neighborhoods. So we use Neighborhood Scout, which aggregates a bunch of different metrics. So we look at per capita income, median household income, how the schools are doing, how, is it a safe neighborhood? What's the crime? Um, Various metrics like that. And so, when we're doing our analysis, when we get an OM, we get OMs every week, um, we're able to knock out, I'd say, at least half based off of not meeting our initial property criteria of vintage and unit count. And then of the remaining, we could probably knock out another 50% or so based off of not meeting the neighborhood demographic criteria. And so by doing that, we're able to funnel down to a much smaller percentage to then underwrite. And underwriting takes us a bit of time. We've got a very detailed underwriting process. So that helps us winnow away, so we're not underwriting a bunch of stuff that, we really shouldn't be.
Yeah, you talked about, first of all, focusing on the markets. What are the markets that you like? There's different criteria you look at there to select your markets. But once you have those markets, when you're coming across opportunities, first of all, you're looking at the unit count, you're looking at the vintage or the age of the construction of that property, you're looking at the size, you're looking at the neighborhoods, the exact locations, the submarkets. And then if it fits that criteria, then you move forward with the actual underwriting and
Yes.
ensuring, whether or not it's a fit based on the economics of that actual
Yes.
deal. I think it's really important for people to understand is that you do want to have a vision of what you're looking for, right? Because
Yes.
if you just start underwriting every deal that a broker sends you, you're just going to be running all over the place, right? You want to have a vision. You want to know what it is you're looking for. And you talked about a certain vintage, a unit count, locations. And there's not to say that, what Zach is doing or what I do or what someone else does is the right way to do it. You just have to copy what we're all doing. Figure out what works for you. And it's great if you have a reason behind it. If you have a competitive advantage or you have an edge or you know a market or you know a certain demographic, play into that, right? Because that's going to give you a
Right.
chance to do deals or to make money in areas that maybe other people can't. But it is really important to have that deal criteria. So I'm really appreciative of you sharing that. Talk to us about some of the deals you've been able to do more recently.
Our most recent acquisition is a 124 unit apartment complex in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's a beautiful property, and it's located in a great area. It's value add. We just bought it in December of last year, so we're just getting started on our stabilization and working on a unit upgrade plan. But that's probably, I think we've underwritten that for a 5-year hold. Um, the one we bought prior to that, we're about a year into the renovation process, and that's a 180 unit apartment complex in Kansas City, um, on the Missouri side, and that's another great property, much larger property. I think it's almost like 25 acres, very very large property, and we're working through the upgrade process, and it's going well.
I love it. I love it. How many units did you say that KC property was?
180.
180 units.
Yeah,
Okay. So
yeah,
when I hear, you know, North Carolina and I hear, you know, Kansas City and St. Louis, those feel like different markets to probably me and our listeners. So
yeah,
talk to us about kind of how you are able to come with maybe some of those Midwest, mostly, historically cash flow type markets versus
yeah.
maybe some of the markets in the Southeast that are maybe a little bit more known for, appreciation.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting because we had been interested in North Carolina for about 7 years. We've been looking, and we've been in best and final at least 3 times prior to this one that we acquired in December. But we've had more traction in the Midwest historically. And what's interesting is now I'm seeing on a lot of the reports that Kansas City and a couple other markets in the Midwest are the hot markets. And then I'm seeing in North Carolina, there's some absorption issues, right? And so maybe that's why we were able to get this one in North Carolina. It's not like the hot market right now because some areas are experiencing some absorption issues. But our view on absorption is it's really you have to drill down to the neighborhood and you have to drill down to the asset class. If you're buying B minus and lifting it up to a solid B, maybe it's not being impacted by a brand new Class A core plus, multifamily coming to market. You kind of have to drill down and do that analysis. But but yeah, we like the Midwest, and historically we've been able to acquire more properties there. The cap rates are a little bit more decompressed, and but now we are seeing a little bit of a shift in the Southeast, so we're hoping we'll have more opportunity there as well.
Yeah, and I love that you talked about the, kind of the differences in the markets there. And you talked a little about, just you know, the new construction, and how quickly the absorption rate, right? So when we think
Yeah,
about the absorption rate in some of these markets, and for those that don't know, absorption is just how quickly these new units get filled, right? You have new construction, a builder puts, 100 new units on
yeah,
the market. How fast do those 100 units fill up? Because we're trying to basically understand the law of supply and demand. We have
right.
new supply. Does that demand match the new supply? Because if not, what ends up happening is rents then are going to come down or there's going to be some level of concessions. So, what Zach was getting at is that, really when you're looking at these markets, it's not just looking at the metro, right? You're not just looking at the MSA and how many new units are coming into the MSA and then factoring in, okay, well, this is going to impact rents here, you really have to look at the submarkets. You have to look at those neighborhoods because those residents who are in those neighborhoods or in that submarket, they don't care about that new luxury class A, apartment building downtown. They were never going to stay there. It wasn't a realistic option for them, right? For them, it was more what's in my area, what's in my neighborhood. Now, certainly you may lose some people because if those properties are having a hard time attracting tenants or getting the rents up, and they have to cut their rents, well, there's going to be a bit of a trickle down impact. But a lot of
Yeah.
times it really is at the neighborhood level because it's a different demographic altogether. So I think it's just really important for people to understand those nuances that can get a little tricky, especially when you read reports and you see the numbers and
Yes.
you want to get excited or you want to, make decisions based off the data. But a lot of times that data is either already outdated or it's not really applicable at the neighborhood level. Can you just talk more about just kind of the granular approach that it takes to really understand some of the data and the inputs that you're looking at so that you
Yes.
are making sound decisions based on the reality and not just a report?
Sure. I'll give you an example. So recently passed on a property in Des Moines. I think the Des Moines market is a very strong market, really great demographics. But we were looking at a property, I think it was built in sometime around 2016, a beautiful property, but within a 2 mile radius, it might have even been within like a mile and a half radius. There were like four new projects currently under construction that were going to bring, easily over 500, 600 more units to that market. And and so because of that, we passed on the deal. Um, we just did not, once we were underwriting for that and projecting out the impact that would have both on rents and on occupancy, it just we didn't think we would be competitive enough to even submit an offer, so we passed on it.
I love that. And that's a great example, right? You're looking at a 2016 vintage, but within a 2 mile radius, there were four other apartment communities being built. And when
Yeah,
you factored in the impact that would have, it really made you realize that, hey, we may not be able to implement our business plan or reach the rents that we project because there's going to be so much competition, right, for these new
right.
units. And I think that's such a great way of thinking about it and a great insight for our listeners to take away. Zach, let's talk about kind of what's next, right? As you look at where the market is, when you think about where you want to take the portfolio, where do you think there's opportunities moving forward?
Well, we're still looking in our select markets in the Midwest and the Southeast, and we're smaller, so our goal is to acquire two to three more properties this year, two to three more apartment complexes. And so that's what we're really focused on. And you know how it is, multifamily value adds very competitive. So it's very hard to say when that next deal is going to come. But we're underwriting every week looking for the next deal.
Yeah, and I think that's important too, right? You have to just be active. I know some folks may want to
Yeah,
sit and wait for the market to come back, but the truth of the matter is it's a real-time market. Things change every
yeah,
day and you get some insight. Every time I underwrite a deal, submit an offer, I get some feedback, right? So you get
yeah,
a little bit of feedback on where the market is and where it was and where it's headed and all of those things. So I think it's really important to stay active and also to be patient with the results as you've kind of called out. You don't know exactly when you're going to get that deal, but it is important to stay active. Well, Zach, if folks want to listen or learn more about you, they can check out your company's website. Go to prosperitycre.com. We will make sure we link to that in our show
thank
notes.
you.
Right now, we're going to go to our round of insights. Zach, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Well, I'll tell you about my worst investment was when I owned a lot of single family homes. A friend and I decided to buy a mobile home park, a very small mobile home park. And we were attracted to the cap rate. It had a 10 plus cap rate. And it was in a very remote location in a city called Yuma in Arizona. I live in Los Angeles. There's no easy way to get to Yuma. It's a long drive through the desert, past the Salton Sea. So it's like a 5+ hour drive. And the property, we were attracted to the cap rate because it was like a C minus property. And it was a lot of hands-on work to maintain that property. And end of day, it wasn't worth the time and effort we put into maintaining that property. So that was a big lesson to me. That's why I don't buy Class C. I'm just not interested in that. You know, people have to find their comfort level. Some people are really great at Class C and putting in that effort to make sure that cash flow is coming in and dealing with all of those problem child tenants. But I prefer not to. So that was my big lesson is don't be attracted just to a cap rate on paper or a projected NOI on paper. Really look at what's going to be involved to achieve that cap rate, you know, and establish your comfort level about what type of property you're interested in.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Well, I mentioned Neighborhood Scout. That's a great aggregator that we like to use. It doesn't cost too much, and it makes it very easy to look at a number of demographics for your neighborhood for a property that you're looking at.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
I'd say the book I've recommended the most is by Walter Isaacson. It's a biography of Benjamin Franklin. It's a terrific book. Benjamin Franklin is an amazing Renaissance man, so many achievements, and so instrumental as a founding father of our country.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Well, I like to exercise daily. I think for me, there's kind of a Zen element to it to help me focus and clear my mind if I'm just focusing on exercise. So I think exercise is important.
All right, give me your number one insight for selecting the right market to invest in.
Well, you need to set up your criteria. So as I mentioned, we have like 20 different criteria that we look at. And so we're only going into, for example, landlord-friendly states with no rent control, business-friendly, population growth, job growth, net migration in. We like areas with a STEM focus.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's lighten the mood. You are in California. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Oh boy, I don't know. I'm a vegetarian, and yeah, there's a place called Osteria Labuca that my wife and I like to go to on date night. Great bar, great pasta. It's in the valley.
Right.
I live in the valley.
Sounds like a nice one there. We'll have to put that one on the radar next time we come out there.
Yeah.
Listen, Zach, you gave us a lot of great stuff. I really appreciate you sharing a little bit about your journey coming from the law background and to
Yeah.
kind of running your grandfather's estate. And that really opened up your eyes to real estate, the possibilities, overseeing kind of, some of the properties that he already owned, but then also how to take that and then build your own portfolio, working with other investors, the lessons you talked to us about from single tenant to multi-tenant, and now what you're doing in the multifamily space. Again, for those folks who want to learn more, they can go to your website, prosperitycre.com. Zach, I appreciate you taking this time to spend with us today. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a good day.
Thanks very much, John. Enjoyed it.